Welcome to Lesson 4 in Unit 15, Guardians of the Garden. In this lesson, students will work to answer the question, what happens to plants from a frost? In this lesson, students investigate what happens when plants are exposed to a frost. They figure out that some changes to a substance are reversible and others are not. They make connections to the storyline by realizing frost is a weather condition that can harm plants. Some plants grown in Missouri could be exposed to a frost. There are several opportunities for ELA cross-curricular connections throughout the lesson. You can look for specific standard connections in the Unit 15 teacher guide. This lesson will take approximately 5 days to complete. For the Engage portion, you'll show students a video of frost forming on a plant and ask questions about what they've learned about conditions that cause frost and how they can investigate what happens to plants in a frost. You'll revisit the driving question board and add any new questions and highlight any others connected to the learning goals of this lesson by calling attention to questions about what happens to plants in a frost. The investigation for the Explore portion will need the plants started before Lesson 1, the materials from Lesson 3, and some additional supplies. It's suggested that you begin early in the day if possible. Students will be investigating the effects of frost on the plants. This investigation takes place in 2 parts, and 2 to 3 days are needed in between the parts for the plants to regrow. We suggest you skip science for those days. Pause the video here to review the list of needed materials and the photos showing items you can find in your kit for this investigation. You'll use the setup for the frost investigation shown in the provided tutorial and the instructions detailed in the teacher guide. For the Explain portion, you'll bring the class together and lead a discussion about students' observations from the investigation. Use the provided questions to guide your discussion around the question, what happens to plants in a frost? The goal of this class discussion is to analyze student observations and figure out how the frost irreversibly harmed some parts of the plants, and how some of the changes to the plants are reversible. During the discussion, you will fill out the Lesson 4 summary chart to keep track of the class's ideas. Invite students to use cause and effect in the discussion and remind them about cause and effect by asking why scientists use it to help them. From the discussion, students should understand that Missouri might get frosts because we have cold temperatures. Only food plants that can handle a frost should be grown in Missouri during the times it might get cold. You'll then show students a video about frost damage to plants and ask them questions connecting their frost investigations to the information gained from the video. You'll discuss the terms reversible and irreversible as they relate to the plants in the video. If students are not familiar with these terms, use the differentiation strategy listed in the teacher guide. For the Elaborate portion, you'll divide students into groups of 4 and 5 and share with them that they will develop an argument about what happens to plants in a frost. You'll have students use the Growing Food in Missouri student journal page to construct their argument. You can encourage students to look for evidence in their journals from earlier in the lesson and unit. Once students have used the provided scaffold to construct their initial argument, you'll model shared writing and support students to use scientific vocabulary as well as transition words. Finally, you'll provide students the opportunity to construct their own written explanation using the Growing Food in Missouri Writing student journal page. For the Evaluate portion, you'll have groups exchange their arguments written on the Growing Foods in Missouri Writing student journal page and conduct a peer review. To support student sense-making across the unit, orient them back to the driving question board. Ask, did we answer any of the questions on our driving question board? Do you have any new questions to add to our driving question board? If there are questions that have been answered, remove them from the driving question board and place them on the summary charts. Use this as an opportunity to answer the section driving question, how does weather impact the food we grow? Have students complete the Section 2 summative assessment. By the end of this lesson, students will have constructed an argument from evidence about the effects of frost on plants, In Lesson 5, students will investigate how to protect plants from a frost by tracking weather patterns. For the optional extend portion, you can show students the remaining beet plants, if you planted extras before Lesson 1. You'll ask students what are other natural hazards beyond frost that they think could affect their plants. You'll show students a video about severe weather and ask them questions about testing for natural hazards and the possible effects of the hazards on plants and humans. Students will then plan an investigation to answer those questions. For more information about this unit, visit myscipartners.com.